JD Vance figured he had effectively dodged investigation for years concerning his actual loyalties. He had promoted himself as the authentic advocate for overlooked Americans. He played the Appalachian native who overcame destitution and comprehended their struggles. He pledged to fight for their interest inside the corridors of Washington with his hit memoir and grassroots messaging, alongside the folded sleeves and working-class persona that appeared flawless. The image was airtight, and practically everybody swallowed the narrative as reality. Everybody aside from Jasmine Crockett, who declined to believe the act. She had committed 3 entire days to following the financial pathway. She examined each buck and each asset along with each billionaire donor. She exposed a damaging $15 million document sequence showing precisely who controlled JD Vance. When he condescended to her at that Senate session by implying she was too unsophisticated to understand advanced finance, she smiled since she was prepared to ask him a single inquiry that would destroy the decade's greatest political scam. This is the record of what happened when somebody ultimately insisted on asking, "Senator, who do you answer to?" The Senate Judiciary Committee room was unexpectedly packed for a standard March morning in 2024. The topic of major technology's influence upon American governance had drawn not simply the usual political wonks and reporters, but corporate executives and social justice organizers. An astonishing amount of regular people had journeyed from Appalachia and the Rust Belt to watch. They sported tops decorated with hillbilly elegy and held heavily perused editions of the publication that gave J.D. Vance his celebrity. Senator Vance rested at the panel, placed prominently in the middle of the conservative wing. At 39, he was one of the most youthful individuals in the Senate, enjoying a rapid climb from private equity investor to renowned writer to governmental phenomenon. His autobiography had translated Donald Trump's 2016 triumph for seaside upper classes. His 2022 Senate bid had positioned him as the tomorrow of the Republican faction. He was a grassroots fighter warring for left-behind citizens against crooked aristocrats and massive technology moguls. The paradox of him resting on a panel scrutinizing massive technology companies escaped nobody who had genuinely reviewed his monetary declarations. Nevertheless, the majority of the public had never reviewed them. Most citizens merely knew the trademark J.D. Vance as the speaker for the marginalized and the defender of the laboring demographic. He was the individual who had fled destitution and never abandoned his roots. Representative Jasmine Crockett rested in the testimony area assigned for House delegates asked to participate in combined inquiries. As a participant on the House Judiciary Panel and its Supervisory Division, she had been asked to participate in the interrogation. She had accepted the invitation right away. Vance was pontificating, as he often did, about the crookedness of the upper echelon and the need to protect average Americans. His folded cuffs and relaxed necktie broadcasted a blue-collar realness, even if his Patek Philippe timepiece ran higher than what most of his voters made annually. "Huge technology firms have hijacked our foundations," Vance declared, with his tone bearing the practiced cadence of somebody who had given this address numerous occasions. "They have tainted our government while muting right-leaning perspectives and hoarding wealth as hardworking citizens hurt. We need politicians who understand what everyday folks face constantly, rather than snobs who have never held a real position in their existence." Multiple conservatives bobbed their heads in consensus. Vance's particular style of right-leaning grassroots appeal struck a chord perfectly with the foundation, even though legislative scholars considered it mentally fractured. Once the interrogation segment started, Vance controlled the space. He posed long, wandering queries that functioned effectively as monologues. He talked over testifiers and acted for the lenses with the confidence of an individual reminded his whole existence that he was a genius. Then Crockett was acknowledged to take the floor. "Senator Vance," she started, "you have conversed eloquently regarding huge technology's sway over government, so I would love to ask regarding the impact of tech wealth on your profession in particular." Vance cut in with a condescending grin. "I believe the representative misunderstands the topic. This is not about election funding. This concerns conglomerate authority." "With all appropriate deference, Senator, I grasp the circumstances flawlessly. I am inquiring regarding the Capitol. Perhaps the representative from Dallas ought to stick to topics she comprehends, Vance replied with a vocal inflection oozing with rejection. This entails complicated financial theory, not the basic digital media clips your age group traffics within. It might be more appropriate for lawmakers possessing weightier experiences in such subjects. The chamber grew quiet, and even Vance's conservative peers seemed uncomfortable. You might criticize a person's ideology, but you never blatantly implied a peer was too dumb or unsophisticated to partake in a session. Crockett refused to elevate her volume or exhibit fury. She merely unsealed the initial of numerous dense binders organized precisely before her and gazed at Vance with total tranquility. Senator, I would be thrilled to converse about complicated financial theories. Actually, I have dedicated significant hours getting ready for this exact conversation. I have reviewed your monetary declarations, all 83 sheets of them, 2 times. I have analyzed your private equity group's federal regulatory submissions. I have traced your contributors down to their initial origins. I have examined your revenue avoidance tactics and portfolio arrangements. She presented a paperwork featuring the formal governmental emblem. Therefore, absolutely, let us debate advanced economics. Let us converse about precisely the amount of massive technology funds that built your path, commencing with the $15 million Peter Thiel dropped to buy this congressional spot on your behalf. Vance's condescending grin slipped. And afterward, we shall talk about the $93 million in startup financing originating from West Coast tycoons. We shall cover the performance fee revenue loophole you abuse. We shall review the ethical compromises located inside your asset holdings. We shall address the covert plutocrat coalition you assembled, every bit of it, she stated, staring straight toward him, featuring a blank face yet piercing optics. Because, Senator, I might hail from Dallas, and I might be more youthful than yourself, yet I am incredibly skilled at deciphering monetary paperwork, and your files narrate an enthralling tale regarding whoever truly possesses you. Vance parted his lips to answer, yet zero noise surfaced. He glanced toward his lead attorney, who was desperately opening documents upon her computer. He peered toward his conservative peers, many of whom were unexpectedly highly engrossed in their personal memos. For the initial instance in his governmental trajectory, JD Vance experienced an emotion he had not sensed since his mountain youth. The plunging awareness that he was entirely outmatched emerged. He comprehended somebody had completed their research, and the meticulously assembled mythos he had fabricated was preparing to shatter. Crockett was presently unsealing her subsequent file. Should we start regarding your publication, Senator, the piece that rendered you renowned? 72 hours prior, Jasmine Crockett's legislative workspace looked like an investigator's strategy center. Dry erase panels blanketed a single partition packed with chronologies, currency figures, and links sketched utilizing assorted vibrant pens. Piles of hard copies consumed her meeting desk, encompassing monetary declarations, regulatory submissions, scholarly essays, media reports, and a heavily used edition of Hillbilly Elegy jammed with adhesive markers. Her principal director, Marcus Chen, walked in carrying still an additional pile of records. I located the Rockbridge Network pamphlet, and you are correct. It is significantly more blatant than the journalism pieces implied. Crockett remained upright beside the panel, tracing the financial pathway using a crimson pen. Guide me along the chronology once more, since I need to guarantee I possess the order accurately. Marcus opened a record upon his device. During 2011, Vance encounters Peter Thiel inside Yale Law Academy. Vance subsequently labels Thiel's presentation the absolute pivotal instance of his tenure at Yale. During 2013, Vance begins working at the enterprise legal agency Sidley Austin. During 2015, notwithstanding possessing zilch biological technology background, Vance lands a position at Circuit Therapeutics, a business within Thiel's holdings. Thiel secured the role on his behalf, Crockett remarked, noting the linkage. Practically without a doubt, Marcus responded. During 2016, Vance releases Hillbilly Elegy. Thiel pens a promotional quote endorsing it. That identical calendar year, Thiel employs Vance inside Mithril Capital, his private equity organization. During 2019, Vance initiates his personal investment company, Naria Capital, using $93 million originating from Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Eric Schmidt, alongside alternate West Coast oligarchs, Marcus went on. Mentioning that equivalent period, Vance and Thiel arrange a covert gathering located in Rockbridge, Ohio. They request the presence of Tucker Carlson, Rebecca Mercer, plus additional affluent right-wing personalities. The declared objective entails constructing a massive coalition that survives beyond Trump. The unspoken objective revolves around molding national legislation to advantage technology oligarchs. During 2021, Thiel connects Vance with Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Trump throws his support behind Vance for Congress. During 2022, Thiel contributes $15 million toward Vance's Independent Expenditure Committee, representing the solitary biggest gift toward a congressional run ever recorded. Vance captures the race. Crockett remains silent for a second, analyzing the network of links upon the panel. At exactly which stage throughout this whole chronology was Vance lacking Thiel's financial backing? At no point, Marcus stated. Starting from 2015 until currently, each major professional leap Vance executed was financed, enabled, or directed via Peter Thiel alongside his coalition. Crockett pivoted toward the pile of scholarly articles she had been reviewing, which held critiques regarding hillbilly elegy originating from researchers who genuinely analyzed Appalachia destitution plus the narcotic epidemic. The general agreement proved ruinous. Recite for me that excerpt belonging to the Wisconsin educator once more. Marcus located it instantly. Instructor Jonathan Isaacoff, drafting during 2017, declared, Vance avoids disregarding class-based elements since he lacks awareness. He executes this because it aligns with his specific ideology, held by numerous participants of our societal and governmental upper crust, asserting that impoverished citizens hold responsibility regarding their personal destitution. An additional scholar, Russ Castronovo, contributed, although Vance's autobiography ignited intense arguments, it provided minimal evidence backing its claims, stating dilemmas such as narcotic dependence or destitution remain tied toward individual choices. Consequently, he authored a text faulting broke individuals regarding remaining broke, Crockett remarked sluggishly. He generated almost $2 million utilizing it and leveraged such notoriety to infiltrate private equity. Afterward, he deployed startup investment funds to purchase a legislative position, all whilst branding himself as a hero for those exact marginalized folks. That portrays the outline of the situation indeed. Crockett extracted Vance's monetary revelation form originating in 2023. She had illuminated pertinent passages using numerous hues. And currently he is resting atop roughly $600,000 to $1.2 million inside portfolios overseen via the agency Peter Thiel bankrolled. He maintains $250,000 to $500,000 inside digital currency while the Trump team advocates blockchain-accommodating legislation. He possesses shares within AcreTrader, an enterprise that earns revenue whenever generational agricultural plots collapse and become offloaded towards speculators. Furthermore, Marcus tacked on, he configures his almost $1 million of equity fund revenue to abuse the performance fee tax evasion strategy. That represents the revenue evasion maneuver that permits tycoons to fork over 20% rather than 37%. Crockett took a seat, staring toward the staggering proof scattered ahead of her. He represents zero grassroots champion. He serves as a commodity fabricated by oligarchs. He gets advertised toward laboring individuals, engineered to propel aristocratic agendas whilst acting out blue-collar unity. Her mobile device vibrated, featuring a message originating from a peer inquiring whether she was actually pursuing Vance the next day, given he acts as Trump's favored child, hence exercise caution. She tapped out a reply stating she was pursuing the reality, hence allow Vance to exercise caution. Marcus appeared worried, observing, "You realize they shall attack you aggressively. Vance possesses Trump's support, Thiel's capital, plus each conservative press channel prepared to protect him. This shall differ from Jim Jordan, considering there exists zero definitive proof nor distinct felony, Simply a network of monetary links plus insincerity. Insincerity proved sufficient, Crockett murmured softly. He peddled himself functioning as the speaker for overlooked citizens and penned a volume capitalizing on their agony. He generated massive fortunes from their narratives. Subsequently, he accepted funds off tycoons to implement legislation that harms those identical individuals. She rose and strolled toward the glass, gazing outdoors across the legislative lawns. The upcoming morning, Senator JD Vance was guaranteed to stroll inside that session space, believing he represented the most intelligent individual present. He was bound to assume his elite university credential and startup funding victories rendered him invincible. He remained incorrect. Extract each video of Vance discussing aristocrats, she instructed Marcus. Each address regarding battling on behalf of laboring citizens, and each conversation wherein he bashes massive technology and plutocrats. I desire the entirety of it. What precisely are you plotting? Marcus inquired. I am contemplating we reveal to the nation precisely whoever J.D. Vance truly caters to, and it escapes being the citizens who trusted his publication. The subsequent dawn, Crockett reached the session chamber prematurely. She had hardly slumbered, processing each potential vector of assault, predicting Vance's shields, and ensuring each detail remained verified and recorded. The citizens wearing hillbilly elegy tops were already shuffling inside, eagerly anticipating witnessing their hero in motion. They possessed zero clue they were preparing to view him, deconstruct his own persona. Whenever Vance issued his patronizing remark regarding her necessitating adherence to topics she comprehends, Crockett experienced a recognizable tranquility drape across her. She had confronted hostile lawyers inside tribunals back when she operated as a state-appointed attorney. She advocated for defendants whom the apparatus desired to mute and ignore. J.D. Vance acted as simply an additional privileged human who believed loudness and lineage rendered him correct. He was preparing to discover differently. Following her initial barrage regarding Vance's monetary revelations, Crockett refused to grant him a moment to recover. She produced an edition of Hillbilly Elegy featuring scores of vivid markers sticking out from its sheets. Senator, your autobiography, Hillbilly Elegy, released during 2016 and transformed into an enormous success. It established you as a speaker advocating for neglected citizens, specifically blue-collar folks located in Appalachia alongside the Rust Belt. Does that remain factual? Vance regained a fraction of his collectedness, considering this represented secure ground. Affirmative, I authored about my childhood, my relatives' battles against destitution and dependency, plus the societal elements connected. Furthermore, you generated roughly $1.7 million off the publication, right? Combining upfront payments plus residuals, I fail to remember the precise amount. Your 2017 monetary filing displays $1.7 million inside publishing revenue, and it remains a communal record, Crockett stated, extracting it. Consequently, you acquired almost $2 million, chronicling impoverished citizens' anguish. What exactly did you accomplish utilizing those funds to assist the neighborhoods you documented? Vance squirmed awkwardly, replying, I relocated homeward toward Ohio to inject capital into the area. You transitioned toward Columbus, roughly among Ohio's richest municipalities. You refused to relocate homeward toward Middletown, the place you matured. You declined to inject capital into Appalachia. You carried the capital toward the West Coast initially. She extracted an additional chronology. Following your publication's release, you labored for a technology corporation, next an investment agency, subsequently launching your personalized equity pool. You utilized the volume functioning as a launching pad to infiltrate precisely the aristocratic tier you bash. I desired to transport financial backing homeward toward Ohio, Vance asserted. We shall arrive at your holdings, yet initially permit us to review whatever scholars who genuinely evaluate Appalachia believe regarding your volume. Crockett produced hard copy essays. Instructor Jonathan Isaacoff documented that you disregard class-based elements since it aligns alongside your specific ideology, claiming impoverished individuals carry fault concerning their personal destitution. She recited an additional excerpt declaring, Vance lacks profound comprehension, and he appeared to be formulating numerous conclusions relying upon tiny segments of information. That stems from a communal archive conversation located in Madison. An alternate researcher observed that your text supplied minimal defenses backing its claims, stating dilemmas such as narcotic dependence or destitution remain tied toward individual decisions instead of institutional flaws. Crockett glanced upward away from the sheets. Thus allow me to comprehend, Senator. You authored a volume that researchers declare inaccurately portrays Appalachia and false-broke citizens regarding their personal destitution. You collected almost $2 million off that text. Subsequently, you journeyed toward the West Coast to labor for tycoons. She permitted that to resonate. How precisely does that transform you into a hero for overlooked Americans? Vance's visage was flushing when he replied, I desired to comprehend how startup financing operates, so I might transport those mechanisms homeward to Ohio. Did you comprehend, or did you discover methods to abuse those mechanisms for your personal advantage? Crockett extracted his private equity pool's paperwork. Let us converse regarding Naria Capital. Crockett scattered a sequence of files displaying the chronology of Vance's association alongside Peter Thiel. She had arranged graphic demonstrations, a tactic she had acquired working as a litigation lawyer, to display rather than simply speak. Senator Vance, exactly when did you initially encounter Peter Thiel? I bumped into him inside Yale Law Academy during 2011 whenever he delivered a speech. Furthermore, you subsequently documented that this speech represented the most critical instance of your tenure at Yale, correct? Vance attempted to position it favorably, claiming, he conversed regarding digital advancement and regarding how aristocratic establishments were collapsing. He conversed regarding how aristocrats were collapsing, Crockett cut in, and subsequently he employed you to transform into a member of those aristocrats. During 2016, Mr. Thiel recruited you inside Mithril Capital, his private equity organization. Accurate? Affirmative. I labored over there. Notwithstanding possessing zero startup investing background, and notwithstanding having logged fewer than 24 months functioning as an enterprise attorney, plus 0 hours inside banking, Mr. Thiel simply recruited you. For what reason do you believe that occurred? I possessed abilities that seemed applicable. You possessed a massive hit publication that translated Trump supporters for seaside upper classes. You possessed a reputation. You appeared beneficial to Mr. Thiel, and mutually he granted you access inside his universe. Crockett retrieved a different file. During 2019, you initiated Naria Capital. Exactly what amount of cash did you accumulate? We accumulated $93 million. Originating from exactly who? Vance paused prior to uttering, originating from assorted backers, including Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, plus Eric Schmidt, 3 West Coast oligarchs. They granted you $93 million, notwithstanding you holding 24 months of startup investing background at that juncture. Crockett tilted onward. Senator, what exactly do you believe they were funding? Your professional history or your governmental tomorrow? They trusted within the objective to inject capital into Ohio. During 2021, Mr. Thiel individually connected you with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Is that factual? We convened inside the resort. Affirmative. Furthermore, shortly following that gathering, Executive Trump threw support behind your congressional bid. Next, during 2022, Mr. Thiel contributed $15 million toward your independent expenditure committee. $15 million, Senator, the biggest gift given to an individual congressional hopeful throughout national records. Crockett extracted a graphic. Thus allow us to analyze the chronology. During 2011, you encounter Thiel and label it the absolute critical instance regarding your existence. During 2015, Thiel secures you a position at a biological technology enterprise. During 2016, Thiel employs you at his investment agency. During 2019, Thiel hands you $93 million for your personal investment organization. During 2021, Thiel connects you with Trump. During 2022, Thiel grants you $15 million to campaign for Congress. She stared straight toward him. Straight. Senator, at what exact stage throughout this chronology were you lacking Peter Thiel's financial backing? The chamber remained totally quiet. Multiple of the citizens sporting hillbilly elegy tops were glancing toward one another awkwardly. Moreover, based upon your 2023 monetary declaration, Crockett proceeded, extracting additional records, you currently maintain roughly 600,000 to 1 million bucks inside startup pools overseen via Naria Capital. Despite the fact you retreated from operating the business, you currently remain collecting administrative compensations. You have failed to liquidate from the business Peter Thiel bankrolled. I adhere to every moral regulation, Vance declared. Adhering to baseline lawful regulations is absolutely not the inquiry, Senator. The inquiry remains, who exactly do you cater to, the citizens of Ohio or Peter Thiel, who dropped beyond $100 million installing you inside spots of authority? Vance attempted to reply, yet Crockett was presently transitioning toward her subsequent file. Allow us to converse regarding whatever Mr. Thiel genuinely trusts, considering if you act as his asset, your voters warrant discovering whatever they are receiving. Crockett produced a record featuring polished design which acted as a pamphlet. Senator, during 2019, the equivalent calendar year you initiated your Thiel-backed private equity company, you and Mr. Thiel arranged a gathering located in Rockbridge, Ohio. Is that factual? We arranged a symposium. You arranged a congregation of right-leaning tycoons and broadcasting personalities. Tucker Carlson showed up alongside Rebecca Mercer plus Orrin Cass. The objective, based upon journalism, was to construct a massive coalition that would survive beyond Donald Trump. She hoisted up the pamphlet. You established whatever gets labeled the Rockbridge Network. It operates as a coalition of right-wingers who desire transformation. Permit me to recite off your personal advertising documents, Senator. Crockett located the highlighted segment. Via tactical lawsuits, we shall pinpoint pressure locations wherein the statute permits us to hold malicious participants, encompassing the press, liable. She gazed upward. You avoid assembling community-driven crusades. You remain assembling oligarchs to deploy the judicial apparatus to assault the press. How exactly does that represent grassroots appeal? We are demanding powerful establishments answer for themselves. You represent the powerful establishments. Crockett's tone stayed tranquil yet accumulated force. You remain financed by tycoons, you arrange symposiums for tycoons, and you build coalitions to propel tycoon objectives, yet you advertise yourself acting as a hero for laboring individuals. She extracted a different evaluation. The Washington Post characterized the Rockbridge Network's objective as permitting corporate executives to mold national legislation. Furthermore, based upon Chris Buskirk, who assists in managing the coalition, the concept is, excerpt, either you possess a parasitic upper class and oligarchy, or you possess a fruitful upper class and nobility. He labels this aristocracy. Crockett placed down the files. Senator, that escapes being grassroots appeal, that functions as plutocracy featuring superior marketing. You, alongside your tycoon financiers, have determined that the nation requires to get governed via rich aristocrats, provided they represent the correct rich aristocrats, ones that advantage you. Multiple conservatives upon the panel were presently blatantly awkward. Even Vance's supporters could witness precisely how terrible this appeared. Moreover, the Rockbridge Coalition has previously selected its favored heir to Trump, Crockett proceeded. Based upon journalism, it represents yourself. Peter Thiel's asset remains engineered to survive beyond this presidency. He is entirely not simply purchasing a lawmaker, he is purchasing a prospective executive. She extracted Vance's monetary revelation once more, which returns us toward your continuous monetary links toward the coalition and the ethical compromises that generates. Crockett unsealed a binder that appeared additionally denser than the prior iterations. Senator, permit us to converse about how you configure your revenue originating from Naria Capital. Vance appeared cautious, remarking, my compensation remains confidential. Your 2023 monetary filing displays $327,000 inside wages from Naria, alongside $945,000 inside alternate administrative business earnings. That $945,000 avoids being classified as investment profits, payouts, or yields. It remains configured to exploit whatever gets labeled the performance fee loophole. Remain you acquainted alongside that phrase? It constitutes the payment framework inside corporate buyouts. The payment framework that permits tycoons and startup investors to fork over a 20% revenue levy rather than the 37% levy that everyday citizens fork over. Crockett extracted additional records. Executive Biden ran upon shutting this evasion tactic. Executive Trump ran upon shutting it down. Executive Obama ran upon shutting it down. It gets globally acknowledged functioning as a crooked revenue dodge that advantages the massively rich. She glanced toward Vance. Furthermore, you abuse it. You fork over a reduced revenue levy compared to educators, medical aides, and emergency responders, the citizens you assert to advocate for. How exactly does that represent warring for laboring citizens? The revenue statutes permit numerous actions that remain lawful yet ethically devoid. Your rival during 2022, Tim Ryan, mutually backed bills to shut this evasion tactic. You fought it for what reason? Because you individually profit off it. Crockett extracted research originating from a left-leaning periodical. Based upon this document, simply an aristocratic handful remain qualified regarding the performance fee loophole. Strictly managing associates, the agency's highest leaders, profit off it. Furthermore, you have configured your revenue purposely to abuse it. Therefore, permit me to ensure I comprehend, Crockett remarked. You authored a volume regarding impoverished citizens, generated fortunes, deployed that to infiltrate tycoon spheres, acquired $93 million off West Coast aristocrats, acquired $15 million to campaign for Congress, and currently you abuse a revenue evasion maneuver that permits you to fork over reduced levies compared to the laboring households you assert to defend. She compiled the revenue files. Senator, that escapes being grassroots appeal that constitutes rule by the wealthy. You remain absolutely not battling the upper crust. You constitute the upper crust. Permit us to converse about whoever additionally bankrolled your congressional bid, Crockett stated, extracting Election Commission submissions. Outside Mr. Thiel's $15 million, your independent expenditure committee acquired massive gifts originating from several fascinating origins. She commenced reciting individuals. Stephen Schwartzman, chief executive of Blackstone, contributed $10 million. Blackstone has campaigned heavily upon topics connected toward performance fees. Consequently, the chief executive of an enterprise battling to maintain the revenue evasion tactic you abuse handed you $10 million. The Mercer clan contributed hundreds of thousands. The Uilun clan contributed hundreds of thousands. Those represent a portion of the richest right-wing contributors inside the nation. Those represent precisely the brand of aristocrats you assert to battle. Crockett extracted additional records. Furthermore, subsequently exists pass-through policy, a shadowy capital charity commanded via Peter Thiel that handed you a minimum of $200,000. It operates as a shadowy capital organization, Senator, signifying it lacks the requirement to reveal its contributors. Consequently, there might exist additionally greater tycoon funds we remain clueless regarding. She organized the Election Commission submissions tidily. Consequently, your bid remained bankrolled via East Coast tycoons, West Coast tycoons, alongside shadowy capital organizations, and you label yourself a grassroots champion. Vance attempted to reply, stating, election financing statutes permit contributions. I remain absolutely not challenging the lawfulness. I remain challenging the realness. You constructed your whole persona upon battling crooked aristocrats, yet your profession survives owing to crooked aristocratic funds. Each phase of your ascent got financed via the exact citizens you assert to battle. Crockett tilted onward. Senator, you remain absolutely not battling the plutocrats. You represent the plutocrats' hopeful. You represent exactly what they purchased, utilizing 15 million plus seasons of relationship building. You serve as a commodity wrapped up for blue-collar citizens, financed via tycoons. Permit us to converse about your genuine holdings, Crockett stated, returning toward Vance's monetary revelations, since they expose precisely exactly where your priorities rest. You possess roughly 100,000 to 250,000 bucks inside digital currency, she commenced. Digital currency that you maintain whilst the Trump team, which you currently participate within functioning as second in command, created a tactical digital currency stockpile and executed blockchain accommodating rules. Rules that launched digital currency valuations skyrocketing. Exactly what amount has your holding profited whenever Trump assumed power? I avoid dictating administrative legislation, Vance stated. However, you shall profit off it explicitly inside your individual asset collection. Crockett extracted additional sheets. You additionally maintain holdings inside Revolution's Rise of the Rest startup pool, roughly 100,000 to 250,000 bucks. That pool has bankrolled a minimum of 4 military suppliers. A pair of those, Hermes plus Slingshot Aerospace, acquired military deals valued at millions inside days of Trump assuming power. She permitted that to resonate. You sit upon panels that supervise military expenditures. Your holdings earn revenue whenever military suppliers acquire federal deals. Do you perceive the ethical compromise? I have adhered to moral protocols, again Vance declared. Senator, I remain absolutely not challenging if it remains lawful. I remain challenging if it remains fitting regarding somebody who asserts to advocate for laboring households. Crockett extracted data regarding a different holding. Furthermore, next exists AcreTrader. You sank up to 65,000 bucks via Naria Capital into this enterprise. Remain you acquainted alongside whatever AcreTrader executes? It functions as an agricultural holding portal. It operates as a business that permits East Coast speculators to purchase generational agricultural plots. It transforms national agricultural plots into an economic commodity that gets carved apart and offloaded towards speculators who have 0 times handled soil throughout their existences. Crockett remained reciting off an evaluation she had located. Whenever generational agriculturalists collapse and offload their property, AcreTrader earns revenue. Whenever country citizens forfeit their agricultural plots toward economic speculators, you earn revenue. She stared straight toward him. You authored a text regarding Country America. You established yourself functioning as a hero for these neighborhoods, and currently you sink capital into an enterprise that earns revenue whenever their agricultural plots collapse and become purchased via seaside upper classes. The citizens sporting hillbilly elegy tops were presently avoiding grinning. A few were commencing to appear furious. That escapes being battling for laboring Americans, Senator, that constitutes taking advantage of them. Once more, Crockett extracted a fresh binder, this individual packed featuring hard copy social media posts alongside conversation records. Senator, permit us to converse about your transformation regarding Donald Trump. Vance instantly appeared protective, considering this represented ground he possessed to justify previously. During 2016, you remained incredibly vocal regarding Executive Trump. Consequently, permit me to recite several of your remarks. She extracted a hard copy social media post. You documented excerpt, I act as an anti-Trump individual, I 0 times favored him. She extracted a different piece. You documented that you remained anxious regarding the conduct of a portion of his backers and that it worries you. You documented that Trump acted as societal narcotic for right-wingers. Inside a different dispatch, you labeled him a fool. You stated he could represent the nation's fascist dictator. You informed a reporter he acted as an absolute scammer who remains taking advantage of citizens. Crockett gazed upward. Those represent your phrases, Senator, originating from 2016 communal remarks recorded. I have admitted that I remained incorrect regarding Executive Trump, Vance stated. Remained you incorrect, or did Peter Thiel connect you with Trump during 2021 and abruptly your professional horizon shifted? Crockett extracted the chronology. 2016, Trump represents a fascist dictator, a fool, a scammer. 2021, Thiel connects you with Trump. 2022, Trump represents a spectacular executive and you remain laboring aggressively to ensure he acquires an additional stint. You absolutely did not experience a shift of spirit, Senator. You experienced a shift regarding whoever was financing your profession. She extracted a conversation record. During 2021, you informed a conservative network, "I lament remaining incorrect regarding the fellow. I believe he acted as a solid executive. However, remained you incorrect, or remained you merely uttering whatever you required to utter to acquire the Trump backing Peter Thiel had organized for you?" Vance was grabbing the boundary of the desk. "My perspectives developed," he declared. "Your perspectives developed at the precise second it transformed into economically advantageous regarding them to develop. That escapes being integrity, Senator. That constitutes taking advantage of circumstances." Discussing Executive Trump, Crockett proceeded, "Permit us to converse about the 6th of January 2021 alongside the 2020 race and case. You have stated that assuming you had acted as second in command, you would possess decline to authorize the ballot outcomes. Is that factual?" "I stated that a few territories ought to have delivered replacement delegates so lawmakers might scrutinize the outcomes." "You stated you would possess avoided doing whatever Mike Pence executed. You stated you would possess dismissed delegates originating from territories Trump dropped." Crockett extracted Vance's personal remarks. "You desired lawmakers to determine the race instead of adhering to the foundational procedure alongside the desire of the citizens." "We possessed valid worries regarding ballot security," Vance argued back. "Negative, Senator, you absolutely did not. Those worries got contested inside beyond 60 legal disputes. They got dismissed via magistrates installed via dual factions. They got scrutinized via Trump's personal Justice Department and determined to remain unfounded. There existed zero sweeping tampering, yet you proceed to assert there existed." Crockett's tone stayed tranquil, yet became increasingly fierce. "Mike Pence executed his foundational obligation upon the 6th of January. He authorized the race notwithstanding a crowd that desired to string him up, notwithstanding Executive Trump pivoting against him, and notwithstanding jeopardizing his existence alongside his governmental profession. He executed his obligation, and you have bashed him regarding it. You have stated you would possess acted alternatively. You have positioned yourself alongside the rioters instead of alongside the governing document." She tilted onward. "Senator, Mike Pence practically perished protecting governance, and you bashed him regarding it, entirely not since you trusted the race got hijacked. However, since your tycoon financiers required you to utter it. Since your governmental tomorrow demanded you to position alongside Trump's falsehoods. That escapes being protecting laboring Americans, Senator. That constitutes crossing national governance for individual elevation." Crockett extracted still an additional binder. "Senator, during 2021, you showed up upon a conservative network and delivered a few fascinating remarks regarding citizens lacking offspring. Would you care to inform us, whatever you stated?" Vance appeared cornered, comprehending precisely whatever rested inside that binder. "I remained conversing about legislation surrounding households. You stated, and I cite, 'We get functionally operated inside this nation via the left-wingers, via our enterprise plutocrats, via a group of barren feline women who remain unhappy at their personal existences and the decisions that they have executed, and consequently they desire to render the remainder of the nation unhappy additionally.'" The chamber responded, featuring distributed chuckling plus sharp inhales. "Barren feline women," Crockett echoed. "That represents how you characterized masses of citizens, numerous among them females who remain unable to produce offspring owing to biological causes, numerous who selected professions above child-rearing, numerous who merely never located the correct companion. Furthermore, you labeled them unhappy and faulted them regarding the nation's dilemmas." She extracted additional excerpts. "Inside a different conversation, you stated lacking offspring renders humans increasingly psychopathic and eventually our entire nation slightly less psychologically secure. During 2021, you implied barren educators remained attempting to indoctrinate the brains of our youth. You have pushed for elevated levies upon barren citizens. You have implied that citizens lacking offspring ought to lack an equivalent voice inside governance." Crockett placed down the sheets. "Senator, masses of citizens lack offspring, numerous among them since they lack the funds for offspring owing to legislation you back. Legislation that advantages your tycoon contributors costing laboring households. Shelter expenses have ballooned partially since enterprises akin to those inside your asset collection purchase up real estate. Medical treatment expenses remain devastating households. Daycare remains unpurchasable. Collegiate loans remain paralyzing. These represent legislative catastrophes that render it economically unattainable regarding numerous citizens to produce offspring. Furthermore, instead of confronting those institutional dilemmas, instead of battling for legislation that might genuinely assist laboring households, you ridicule them. You label them barren feline women. You imply they act psychopathic. You assault them. She stared straight toward him. That escapes being defending overlooked Americans, Senator. That constitutes faulting them regarding a framework that your contributors earn revenue off. Senator, during September 2024, you leveled accusations regarding Caribbean migrants inside Springfield, Ohio. Do you recall whatever you stated? Vance appeared additionally awkward, considering this remained more recent and tougher to justify away. I elevated worries regarding journalism of dilemmas. You published onto digital platforms that Caribbean undocumented migrants remained exhausting communal programs and broadly creating havoc everywhere in Springfield, Ohio. You asserted that journalism currently displays that individuals have witnessed their animals snatched and consumed via humans who ought not to reside inside this nation. Crockett extracted truth verifications. Municipal authorities inside Springfield instantly stated those assertions remained fabricated. The Springfield law enforcement located zero legitimate journalism of animals becoming snatched or consumed. The municipal administrator directly declared there existed zero confirmed cases of this. State Executive Mike DeWine, a conservative, stated the assertions remained completely unfounded. The Caribbean migrants inside Springfield reside there lawfully via a valid asylum initiative. They remain laboring inside municipal manufacturing plants, occupying positions that remained staying empty. However, you distributed the falsehood regardless. You magnified it, and despite following it getting exhaustively disproven, you protected it. She extracted journalism clippings. Following your fabricated assertions, Springfield acquired explosive warnings, Caribbean migrants confronted bullying, educational institutions required to get emptied. A whole neighborhood got traumatized owing to falsehoods you distributed. Senator, these represent your voters, citizens residing inside Ohio, citizens who journeyed here lawfully, who remain laboring, adding toward their neighborhoods. Furthermore, you distributed prejudiced falsehoods regarding them consuming animals regarding governmental scores to achieve easy victories alongside electors who could trust the nastiest things regarding migrants. Crockett's tone stayed piercing presently. You imperiled a whole neighborhood utilizing prejudiced fictions, and you have 0 times expressed regret. You 0 times fixed the ledger. You simply shifted onward toward the subsequent provocative assertion. That escapes being advocating for laboring Ohioan, Senator. That constitutes utilizing prejudice for governmental elevation. Crockett rose presently, compiling entirely her binders. The session chamber remained totally quiet. Even Vance's conservative backers had ceased protecting him. The citizens inside hillbilly elegy tops remained taking them off, a few crushing them inside revulsion. Permit me to condense whatever we have discovered presently, Senator Vance. Her tone stayed tranquil, yet bore total ethical dominance. You authored a massive hit autobiography regarding the battles of impoverished mountain folk. You acquired almost $2 million off their narratives. Subsequently, you faulted them regarding their personal destitution and journeyed toward the West Coast to labor for tycoons. You acquired each major position you have maintained via Peter Thiel's coalition. He employed you. He bankrolled your private equity company utilizing $93 million. He connected you with Trump. He dropped $15 million to purchase you a congressional spot. You currently possess holdings overseen via the coalition valued beyond $1 million. You abuse a revenue evasion maneuver that permits you to fork over reduced levies compared to educators and emergency responders. Your bid got financed via East Coast tycoons. You arranged a covert coalition of right-leaning plutocrats to mold national legislation. You sink capital into digital currency whilst advocating blockchain accommodating rules. You sink capital into military suppliers that acquire federal deals. You sink capital into enterprises that earn revenue whenever generational agricultural plots collapse. You likened Trump toward a fascist dictator, labeled him a fool and a scammer pending Peter Thiel connecting you, and abruptly Trump acted as a spectacular executive. You stated you would decline to authorize the 2020 race. You bashed Mike Pence regarding protecting governance. You labeled barren citizens feline women who render the nation psychopathic. You distributed prejudice falsehoods regarding Caribbean migrants that triggered explosive warnings alongside neighborhood bullying. Crockett strolled toward the testimony desk wherein Vance rested, zero longer assured, zero longer patronizing. Furthermore, throughout the entirety of this, you label yourself a grassroots champion, a hero for overlooked Americans, a speaker for laboring households. She placed down her binders. Senator Vance, you kicked off this session via implying I remained overly basic to comprehend complicated financial theory. Consequently, permit me to display to you I comprehend flawlessly. You represent absolutely not a lawmaker, Senator. You represent an economic yield. The terminology struck akin to a bodily punch. Multiple citizens inside the audience inhaled sharply. Even antagonistic journalists remained desperately punching keys. Peter Thiel sank beyond $100 million into you across 13 seasons. He acquired you positions, he bankrolled your business, he purchased you a congressional spot. That escapes being guidance, that constitutes possession. Each massive professional leap you have executed got financed via tycoons. Each legislative stance you maintain advantages tycoons. Each ballot you submit protects tycoon objectives. You remain absolutely not battling the upper crust. You constitute the upper crust. You merely don a superior outfit. Crockett's tone avoided elevating, yet each term bore ruinous exactness. You authored a text capitalizing upon impoverished citizens' anguish, subsequently faulted them regarding that anguish. You grabbed their narratives, generated fortunes, and deployed those funds to infiltrate the exact tier that remains ensuring they remain broke. You defend laboring households whilst abusing revenue evasion maneuvers they remain unable to utilize. You assert to advocate for country America while sinking capital into enterprises that purchase their agricultural plots. You assault barren citizens regarding dilemmas generated via legislation you back. You distribute prejudiced falsehoods. You sabotage governance. You reverse course upon each belief whenever it proves governmentally advantageous. Furthermore, throughout the entirety of it, throughout each double cross, each insincere remark, each legislation that harms the citizens you assert to assist, you advertise yourself functioning as genuine, as legitimate, as an individual among them. She grabbed her edition of Hillbilly Elegy. This text rendered you renowned. It rendered you wealthy. It rendered you an icon representing an entity you 0 times genuinely embodied, since you remained 0 times genuinely an individual among them, Senator. You utilized them, you capitalized upon their narratives regarding revenue and elevation, you constructed a persona upon their anguish, and subsequently double-crossed exactly whatever they required. Crockett placed the volume downwards upon the desk, dividing them. I operated as a state-appointed attorney, Senator. I advocated for citizens who lacked the funds for attorneys, citizens the apparatus abandoned, citizens whom influential forces attempted to mute and abuse. I comprehend whatever it signifies to genuinely battle for citizens who lack authority. You completely avoid battling for them. You battle for the citizens who purchased you, Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, Stephen Schwartzman, the Rockbridge Network, each tycoon who viewed you functioning as a beneficial asset. Her concluding phrases remain soft yet flawlessly legible. Consequently, permit me to inquire you a solitary query, Senator Vance, simply a solitary one, and I desire you to ponder cautiously prior to your reply, since the national populace remains observing. She stared straight toward his pupils. Whoever precisely do you cater to? Represents it the citizens of Ohio who trusted your publication? Represents it the laboring households you assert to defend? Represents it the overlooked Americans you claim you advocate for? Alternatively, represents it Peter Thiel who fabricated you? Represents it the tycoons who bankrolled you? Represents it the plutocrats whose objectives you propel whilst acting out blue-collar unity? Since from exactly where I rest, Senator, having reviewed your monetary revelations, having followed your capital, having recorded your ballots alongside your stances, it remains flawlessly obvious whoever you cater to. Furthermore, it escapes being the citizens who purchased your publication. Quietness, total, flawless quietness. JD Vance rested paralyzed, lacking the capacity to utter words, lacking the capacity to protect his own persona. Since each shield would merely demonstrate her argument, each term he might utter would merely function as extra advertising, extra posturing, extra acting out of a grassroots appeal he had 0 times genuinely executed. "I possess 0 extra inquiries," Crockett stated. She compiled her binders and traveled back toward her chair whilst the chamber erupted. The session space disintegrated into managed disorder. Journalists sprinted toward doorways to submit articles. The citizens who had sported hillbilly elegy tops remained abandoning them upon their chairs inside revulsion. Conservatives upon the panel clustered into pressing dialogues. Left-leaning lawmakers appeared justified, yet additionally mildly stunned, regarding the exhaustiveness of whatever they simply watched. JD Vance rested paralyzed for a few moments, subsequently suddenly rose and departed, lacking addressing any additional queries. His team hustled to pursue his path. Inside moments, Vance unmasked remained tracking position primary across digital platforms. Not Vance Shield nor Vance Reply, merely Vance unmasked. Since their possessed existed 0 shield, 0 reply, simply quietness. Right-wing press attempted to twist it functioning as a factional assault, claiming left-wingers despise triumph narratives and remain envious regarding startup financing mastery. However, the twisting resisted adhering since Crockett had completely avoided asking regarding ideology. She had inquired regarding capital, regarding whoever's capital, regarding exactly who possessed JD Vance. Furthermore, the reply remained irrefutable. Peter Thiel, alongside West Coast tycoons, possessed him entirely. Each phase of his profession, each slot he occupied, each ballot he submitted, the entirety of it trackable rearward toward the citizens who had sank capital into him. Even multiple right-wing pundits remained silent. Charlie Sykes, an enduring right-wing detractor regarding the Trump movement, posted, "Crockett completely avoided simply unmasking Vance's insincerity. She unmasked the whole scam, grassroots advertising, plutocratic financing, blue-collar double-cross. This represents the tomorrow of the conservative faction." Deep that evening inside her legislative workspace, Crockett rested observing journalism broadcasting. Each network remained displaying snippets of the second she had labeled him an economic yield, his failure to reply whoever he catered to, alongside the citizens abandoning their hillbilly elegy tops backwards. Her mobile device vibrated continuously, featuring messages originating from peers. "That proved clinical," a single individual remarked. "You completely avoided simply defeating him, you unmasked him. Each grassroots champion financed via tycoons requires to view that." However, the dispatch that caused her to cry originated from somebody she lacked familiarity with, a previous mineral extractor originating from West Virginia. "I purchased his volume whenever it released, assumed he comprehended our demographic, assumed he was guaranteed to battle for our demographic. Gratitude to you regarding displaying to me the reality. Gratitude to you regarding giving a damn adequately to conduct the investigation. Gratitude to you regarding rising upward for our demographic whenever he avoided doing so to do." Marcus walked in carrying an additional pile of communication notes. "You remain acquiring conversation invitations originating from everybody, physical media, television, digital broadcasts. They entirely desire to figure out exactly how you accomplished it." "I merely trace the capital," Crockett remarked plainly. "That comprises the entirety," I inquired. "Whoever financed JD Vance, whoever possesses his strings, whatever exactly do they acquire mutually?" Furthermore, the reply remained glaring whenever you searched. "He remains absolutely not a lawmaker. He functions as a commodity fabricated via tycoons, advertised toward laboring citizens, engineered to propel plutocratic objectives whilst acting out realness." She rose and strolled toward her glass, gazing outdoors across the shadowed legislative lawns. The frightening element remains, he remains completely not solitary. There exist alternate lawmakers purchased via tycoons, bankrolled via shadowy capital, catering to aristocratic objectives whilst asserting to operate as grassroots champions. Vance remains simply increasingly glaring regarding it since Peter Thiel maintained incredibly exhaustive ledgers. Marcus remains silent for a second prior to inquiring whatever occurs presently. Presently, Crockett grinned faintly. Presently, citizens comprehend they remain unable to erase the knowledge. Each instance Vance converses regarding battling aristocrats, citizens shall recall whoever purchased his loyalty. Each instance he asserts to defend laboring households, citizens shall recall his revenue evasions alongside West Coast holdings. Each instance he acts out grassroots appeal, citizens shall witness the acting. The persona remains shattered, the commodity remains unmasked, and that represents a beginning. Her mobile device vibrated once more, this instance a message originating from a solitary of the conservative lawmakers who had attended the session. You executed whatever required getting executed. A portion of our faction have comprehended regarding his financing for a period. Please somebody ultimately stated it openly. Crockett tapped out a reply, inquiring, consequently, for what reason did you refuse to utter it? The reply arrived rapidly. Governmental truth, Trump adores him, Thiel bankrolls bids. It remains intricate. That represents the dilemma, Crockett stated audibly while she placed downwards her device. It ought to totally avoid remaining intricate. Assuming somebody gets purchased via tycoons, assuming they remain double-crossing the citizens they assert to advocate for, assuming they function as a scammer, that ought to prove straightforward. Somebody ought to utter it. She grabbed her edition of Hillbilly Elegy, the exact one blanketed inside adhesive markers plus illuminations. She had reviewed it 2 times whilst getting ready. It appeared excellently drafted and captivating inside sections. She comprehended for what reasons citizens had bonded alongside it. However, it functioned additionally as a falsehood, entirely not inside its realities regarding Vance's youth, but instead inside whatever it suggested regarding his character. It hinted he comprehended blue-collar battles, that he was guaranteed to transport those battles alongside himself, that he was guaranteed to battle for citizens identical to the ones he had matured alongside. Alternatively, he had utilized their demographic, utilized their narratives to construct a persona, utilized that persona to infiltrate the upper crust, utilized that aristocratic standing to acquire authority, and utilized that authority to cater to the tycoons who had bankrolled him instead of the laborers who had trusted his word. That remained the genuine narrative of JD Vance, completely not the destitution toward wealth fable he had advertised, but instead the narrative regarding exactly how national plutocracy operates inside the contemporary era, pinpoint a captivating representative originating from the correct population, bankroll their ascent, advertise them functioning as genuine, and deploy them to propel legislation that advantages the massively rich whilst asserting to assist laborers. Crockett had unmasked that apparatus. She had displayed the ledgers. She had inquired the query that broke the fantasy. Whoever precisely do you cater to? Furthermore, JD Vance, regardless of completely his elite university qualifications alongside startup financing triumphs, had lacked the capacity to reply. Since the reply, Peter Thiel, West Coast tycoons, the Rockbridge Coalition, plutocratic objectives, remained excessively ruinous to confess. She transmitted a concluding message that evening toward the 8 previous mineral extractors plus manufacturing laborers who had journeyed toward the Capitol sporting hillbilly elegy tops and abandoned them crushed upon their chairs. Gratitude to you regarding trusting somebody possessed the capacity to defend your objectives. You warranted superior representation compared to JD Vance. You warrant lawmakers who genuinely cater to your demographic instead of tycoons who purchase their loyalty. A solitary individual replied, remarking, "You displayed to us the reality which represents greater than the majority of lawmakers would execute." Crockett gazed toward her dad's portrait upon her workstation. Duty signifies dedication. It additionally signifies voicing reality even whenever, notably whenever, that reality unmasks influential humans. The upcoming morning, there were guaranteed to exist additional battles, additional sessions, additional lawmakers who required getting asked, "Whoever precisely do you cater to?" However, this evening, JD Vance's meticulously assembled persona rested inside rubble. The grassroots exterior had fractured. The tycoon marionette cables remained observable. Furthermore, the nation recognized precisely whatever hillbilly elegy genuinely represented.